Everyone sorry, always do that. Stan Stalniker and Andre Chichiro. I'm going to hand over to you guys, and yeah, thank you for joining us.
Well, hello to our gigantic audience, both online and here, swaths of people across the Blue Zone. My name is Stan Stalniker. I work with a company called Hub Culture, and we are partnered as one of three pillars within this new Ocean Climate Fund that we'll be talking about today. Our co-founders here are Alexei from Evercity. Well, he's really working as our kind of technical pillar. Hub Culture is focused on the community pillar, and Andre Chicharan, who's up until very recently with the Green Climate Fund, is our finance pillar. So we have three areas of collaboration for a really groundbreaking approach to funding climate solutions for the ocean. Approach that is focused across a number of different categories, a number of different locations and geographies, and a number of different really goals and initiatives. So we're going to spend some time here in conversation to talk about all of that, and I'm going to kind of lead the moderation. But maybe, Andre, you can start off with giving our group here a little bit of background on the origin of the fund and its connection to your work over many years at the Green Climate Fund.
Thank you, Stan, and good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, this idea had some time for fruition, for developing, for fledging. And I well remember our first meeting in Davos, where we had this discussion in the whirlpool of events, meetings. This is something that struck me immediately as impactful and innovative approach that will be useful for us to take on and try to develop into the practical implementation. Several months later, we are here after tremendous amount of work and a lot of achievement on our way towards really launching this Ocean Climate Fund initiative into the implementation. And from my perspective, where I see a lot of handshaking, good intentions without traction, this is something I believe we can put into action, concentrating our knowledge, our capacities, our capabilities, and of course catalyzing partners through the creative use of technologies, through the engagements of communities, and of course bringing finance. Finance here is not to sing. Finance here is to make a splash. Even if our hundreds of millions we are looking at to catalyze will be a drop in the ocean, we are still trying to think it as some sort of a pathway that would lead us and our partners and our followers into the concentrated and effective deployment of technologies, speeding up the process to create impacts alongside mitigation and adaptation dimensions. So as I said, we had a lot of work, and maybe again, we will talk about communities and countries' engagements from your perspective, Stan. But there is much greater way ahead, and definitely we are welcoming all our partners. Maybe to drop one Bitcoin for each ocean around the world, just for the beginning, and then later on make it into the wave of money, of ideas, of people's solidarity and joint action. Thank you all, and good luck to all of us.
Andre, can you talk to us a little bit about the work that Evercity does generally, and then how we're going to attach this into the fund? And while you're thinking about the answer to that question, I'd love to give you guys a little bit more background about that introduction of those three pillars that we just spoke about: technology, finance, and community. Hub Culture is a social network with a very long history, 20 years of operative time, and this will be our second fund. Our first fund was launched 4 years ago and has been focused on the digital asset world. Because of that approach, we actually were speaking with the team here in Davos about the work that we're doing to put nature on our board. And we, in 2023, became the first company in the world to replace our board of directors with nature, and we placed the Atlantic Ocean on our board. This was a legal process that we did over 6 months with the Earth Law Center, and it involved essentially creating a proxy legal layer between the board humans and the role that they do as board members. But this appointment of the Atlantic Ocean actually created a voice for nature inside our company. And it was that voice of nature being involved in the company that first attracted the conversation with the Green Climate Fund and with Evercity about how we can start to move forward into practical action to help the ocean. So I do want to give you that little bit of background because the introduction of nature into a company can have unintended consequences. We did not expect that we would then spend an entire year working to build a new global finance facility for the ocean. But that's really a community-based focus for us that I'll talk about more in a minute. But it's based on that introduction of nature into the core operating processes of our company. Now, your core operating processes are very focused on technology. Can you give us a little bit of an example about how Evercity works as a technology and how it supports funds, not just what we're going to do with the OCF, but like supports funds generally in terms of their operational capacity and its link into essentially transparency and governance?
Well, thanks a lot for this wonderful introduction, Stan, and welcome everyone to our Digital Innovation Pavilion. My company, Evercity, is one of the hosts of the pavilion. In here, we have a 2-week agenda on various topics related to digital innovations and sustainable development. So in Evercity, we've been doing this for a while, and this is my 9th COP already. We've been leading this digital innovation agenda, collaborating with the UNFCCC Secretariat, doing various use cases and implementations of digital tech. And one of our core focuses is, of course, climate financing. So, we've been hearing a lot this statement that there are lots of investors and the money is there, but there are no projects. We've heard other statements that there are lots of projects, but there's not enough money, and the money is just not there. It's just really hard to access any money. So the solution here is actually creating a digital bridge between investors and projects, because those groups have different kind of knowledge levels in terms of climate financing, and it's hard for them to understand each other because investors want to have everything well structured according to GCF criteria or GEF or whatever private investors criteria have. And projects are just doing their business, their core stuff. It can be nature-based, it can be innovation-driven, based from a university or just a private group. And so there is no connection between them. And so in Evercity, we figured out already a couple of years ago that our aim is to create the digital bridge. And thanks to innovation, we can actually help those guys to better understand each other, and not only understand each other, but also create trust. And trust is created by transparency. And transparency can be created, again, with the digital technologies. So we have 3 pillars in our work as Evercity. One is carbon markets, accelerating actually carbon markets with a big focus on origination. Other pillar is green debt, and the 3rd pillar is climate fund management. So within the climate fund management pillar, we're happy to support the Ocean Climate Fund and provide digital infrastructure that would help to, first of all, onboard potential projects, evaluate those projects, do the due diligence using all those MRV tools, sensors and satellites and AI, and provide some sort of an assessment, including the climate risk part and some of the other parts. For the projects, we're providing a very easy interface to input the data so that they don't have to know Ocean Fund's investment criteria or any sort of GCF process or any other thing related to purely climate finance. They just put their data in, and then the system helps to screen those projects according to Ocean Fund criteria, and then structure the data and bring the information to the Ocean Fund investment board so that they can have their decisions, and then helping the Ocean Fund to manage the portfolio, do the monitoring and reporting, which is super important for many climate finance instruments and many climate funds, because when those funds are raised, everyone is talking about impact and transparency and reporting. But in fact, just a few of them are doing well on the reporting side, which is would not be the case for the Ocean Climate Fund, which will be doing reporting and monitoring based on the core digital infrastructure that would be interacting with projects starting from the very beginning, helping those projects get through the pipeline and get structured, and then doing the monitoring and reporting directly based on this data and based on this infrastructure. So all in all, in a nutshell, the role of EverCT is to create a trust and transparency layer and enable and streamline efficient due diligence and fund management, while also providing the reporting for the fund and automating a lot of functions that otherwise could have been done by consultants or very expensive, experts and professionals. And so, the fees would go to them and not to projects. So we want to optimize that. These are, in a nutshell, our thoughts. We're using a bunch of technologies. The tech is there. We have all these beautiful partners at the pavilion. Most of them are EverCT partners as well, including the United Nations Climate Change Innovation Hub. We've been here for a while, and we've been building our tech based on the feedbacks, based on the collective knowledge that we all share here during the climate conference. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'd love to share a little bit more about how we can get you involved in the Ocean Climate Fund. So as I mentioned, we have the technology layer, we have the community layer, and we have the finance layer. We're going to go back to finance in just a moment, but as we pass the mic back towards Andre, the Community Partners is a program that we built through Hub Culture to bring in the ocean community to the conversation about how we allocate funding in this regard. Now, with regard to the GCF and the work that they do, this is what I think of as an artery. This is very big project finance. It's often going to be focused on infrastructure, on climate adaptation at a very large level, at say green energy or wave energy, very big projects. But all the way through this fund, we're creating different cells to be able to enable participation at different levels. Because what we've identified is that there's a gap between the very large project finance that everyone talks about. We had $30 billion last year from Dubai. There's talk of a $500 billion fund coming out of this top. From that, we're advocating socially for a $10 billion allocation for oceans. We don't know if that will happen, but all these big numbers kind of float up there. And then you see all these on the ground projects that are looking for project finance and having a really hard time finding it. Part of the reason for that is that it can cost a lot of money for big projects to evaluate small projects. And so if your project isn't worth 5 or 10 or 15 million, you're not going to spend 2 or 3 or 400,000 to evaluate a project. One of our goals is to build digital technology using techniques like EverCity and Hub Culture to radically increase the transparency and lower the cost of looking at projects. One of that is through the Community Partner Program, where a person or a company can go and sign up as a community partner if you're in the ocean space, right on the website. That then gives you entree into an oceans hub where you'll have access to voting, to project discoverability, and to the creation of what we call coalitions and systems. So groups like at the sovereign level or even at the institutional level can create a system and fill groups of coalitions around a project. So there could be a system, for instance, around coral reefs, and then coalitions from various groups that are under that category. Or there could be like a national system, maybe for Brazil, and then a series of coalitions that are Brazil focused within that grouping. That will give us visibility of projects so that the rest of the community can then participate even from a crowdfunding level all the way up to getting the project visible for larger programs and directing project finance back down to what we think of as the capillaries from these big arteries. Now, this is going to take some time to actually populate and build, but I'm really happy to announce today that just over the last 6 months with Flo, our development director, and India, the rest of the team, we've already built 28 community partners who collectively represent over 200 organizations involved with oceans. So one of the really interesting lever points we're finding is that groups like the World Ocean Council, like Ocean Visions, Oceans 2050, are already working with dozens or even hundreds of ocean-related organizations. So by bringing these groups together to be in collaboration with the OCF, we're actually being able to communicate in a more effective way and to help to sort of get the fish swimming in the same direction, so to speak. Now, those fish need food, right? And that takes us back to the finance part. Can you give us some impact? I know that you have had 7 years at the Green Climate Fund. You're now transitioning with helping the Green Climate Fund stand up projects around the world outside of the confines of the GCF. But can you give our audience a little bit of more flavor about the goals of the GCF generally and how you see the OCF and member countries benefiting from the OCF?
Right. So for those of you who are not maybe well familiar, GCF is like a World Bank for climate projects. This is the largest financial organization dedicated to support financially mitigation and adaptation projects in developing countries with support not only financially but also organizationally and providing other types of facilitation. Green Climate Fund is definitely a financing mechanism of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And being in a privileged position of funded by the donation from the developed countries, their role is to catalyze co-financing and climate action with concessional financing, meaning low interest rates, meaning higher risk positions in the capital structure of the projects, and grant support for enabling environment and capacity building. So this is something that has tremendous value, especially from the optics and perspective of the private sector, which will be integral part of our Ocean Climate Fund capital structure. We would like to have this approach of blended finance, where catalytic support from the organizations like the Green Climate Fund will be helping private sector investors to streamline the deployment of promising mitigation and adaptation technologies in the context of developing countries. There are layers of risks here, and without support of catalytic climate finance, it will be quite difficult to achieve the goal of organization like the Ocean Climate Fund. So bringing together capital, bringing together communities, and bringing together technologies on our platform will be the solution for some problems that so far maybe escape the attention of the world communities. Again, we are talking about national boundaries in most of the GCF projects. But let's think about the fact that almost 50% of our planet is not somebody's territory. This is somewhere in the outer space, but it still have tremendous climate impacts. And we have to take care of it, not as a part of the government, but a part of the responsible inhabitants of this planet who are tasked by the current situation to pass this planet over to the years ahead. So this is what we're trying to achieve here, going beyond the limits of national boundaries, going beyond the limits of silo thinking and established paradigms towards something that will be impactful. And there are a lot of exciting opportunities, both on technological, both on business innovation that we are already discovering during our initiation stage. And I'm definitely excited what will be ahead during the next months of the project implementation. So in that sense, again, our call out there to our future financial partners is definitely come to us, be part of this exciting initiative, and definitely be assured that through the coordinated efforts of very good and determined team, we are on the right track towards the goals of the Ocean Climate Fund and overall climate finance.
We'd like to open it up for questions in just a moment if you have questions about what we're doing. But before we do that, I want to give you one more piece of information around some of the advisory structures of the fund. So far, we've appointed 3 scientific advisors who are going to be advising aspects of the management team with the fund. The first one was Dr. Deborah Brosnan, who's a very acclaimed oceanographer and ocean scientist. The second is Dr. Sylvia Earle from Mission Blue, who is a little bit behind the scenes, but is quietly advising us from Mission Blue on all of this. And then the third is Carlos Duarte, who is also a very famous oceanographer, working with Ralph Chami on new ocean economics. And together, Ralph, Carlos, and I presented the fund to over 1,000 people at the Sustainable Ocean Summit just last week via video to explain the really important reasons why focusing on oceans is a crucial part of the climate conversation. So a few facts for you. If anyone can guess, what could be the potential economic loss of the disappearance of Arctic sea ice? What is the cooling value to the planet of Arctic sea ice? Any ideas?
10 degrees.
Well, MIT and their work in AI, they've worked with ChatGPT and AI to calculate the global economic impact of that. 30 trillion for the value of the cooling properties of Arctic sea ice. Just one ocean fact. Another ocean fact, ocean acidification is changing the pH balance of the ocean from an average of 8.5, dropping towards 7.9. An ocean that falls below 7.9 in the pH balance actually creates an ocean that's too acidic to support photoplankton and phytoplankton. When that happens, the ocean dies. You end up with a dead zone. That actually has 2 impacts. Number one, all ocean life dies because there's no oxygen production from those photo and phytoplanktons, which are essentially algae and green things that absorb carbon dioxide, providing a very valuable service for those of us pumping pollution into the air, but also pumping out oxygen. When the ocean stops pumping out oxygen, up to 80% of the oxygen on the planet is coming from the ocean. When we kill the phytoplankton through an acidic ocean, we also kill the oxygen conveyor belt for the planet. Over a 200-year period, that could be an extinction level event for a mammalian oxygen producing life. So these are really big long-term feedback loops that are connected to the ocean. Does anyone want to guess the average surface level temperature of Gulf water around Florida this summer? 84 degrees. 5 degrees above the historic average, and something that has never happened before. Like surface level temperatures should not be in the 80s and 90s anywhere on the planet. This is why we're getting hurricanes and storms that are generating much more moisture and creating stronger impacts and effects. So with Hub Culture and the work that we've been doing, we've really decided that putting our effort into oceans, looking for ocean solutions, is something that is worth the time and energy of everyone, and it's worth investing in. On the other side, there are great potential solutions that are coming and that are even available now that can change the dynamic of this. So some of the companies that have signed up as community partners include Coral Vita, which is doing outstanding work to regrow corals that are more resilient to heat. They can grow a coral 50 times faster than a traditional coral. So what would have taken 50 years to repopulate, they can do it in 1 year. There's CalWave, which is working on ocean-based energy. There's Scout, which is actually working on marine protected areas for seafood to create sustainable seafood sources that are actually going to be better for people and better for the fish themselves, because they're actually being grown in a marine protected area and then consumed outside of those marine protected areas in a better way. There's really literally hundreds of new solutions that are ocean related that can lead to a better life for people, a better environment for the planet, and also, for those of you in the finance world, more profit. Any other thoughts, or should we open it up? Do we have questions? And it's nice to see some of our friends here from UN Live, Katja. We've done some great work together, and you've done great work for nature. So we're excited to bring some of the OCF work with oceans into your ecosystem. Anyone have a question? Please.
Project criteria. That's a fantastic presentation, and just interested to know what your project criteria is. Sorry, tell the story of the coalition.
I missed your name, but maybe Andre can talk about that.
Sure, definitely. We cannot see sort of years ahead, and establishing clear selection and eligibility criteria for our project will be one of the preparatory work elements that we're seriously considering. In that sense, keeping balance between mitigation and adaptation, answering the priority needs of countries who may be willing to put oceans in their NDCs and utilize great climate mitigation and adaptation of ocean-related solutions in order to achieve their national determined contribution goals will be with the key indicators that we will use in our work. Of course, private sector optics by disguise might require attention to the financial parameters of these projects and profitability and sustainability in the long run that will be going beyond one-off financial support intervention, as well as paradigm shifting pathway that we can establish with the support of these projects for greater audience of similar initiatives and undertakings will be something as well. Of course, we will calibrate our intervention depending on the availability of financial resources and financial needs of the projects, and aligning that project's participants' interests with our interests. Again, as I mentioned, we would like to be this initiative as self-sustaining, generating profit, and definitely for the next round, maybe going for the other parts of the planet where we can have more meaningful contributions and more sizable financial participations from the private sector will be something that we will keep in mind while structuring these projects. I would like to also briefly mention indigenous knowledge, which sometimes getting neglected, but this is a tremendous value and treasure of solutions that we have to take into account, that we have to support and share that among relevant stakeholders. In that sense, we definitely will be taking into the account the input from our community partners and indigenous people groups of the countries who will greatly benefit this initiative for the oceans and for the planet.
One example of that, one of our community partners is Bloom and Blue Catalyst, and we're also talking with the Green Accelerator. So the idea that they would be able to incubate and accelerate new ideas and technologies also intersects with our academic partner program. So we are talking with at least 6 universities right now about academic partnerships where we would be able to observe and hopefully scale up solutions that are coming out of the university sector. So I can't name any of them yet because we're still in a lot of discussions. It's turning out to be harder to sign academic partners than it is to sign corporates. But another example that I think is interesting is the startup sector. Even one of our partners, Ocean Bottle, and we're even talking to some apparel companies about how they could actually create, say, a product out of ocean plastic, and then have the profits of that product circle back as an investment into the fund. So they would actually enjoy a larger return on capital over time than they would have just by taking the profits of that product and going back into their normal cycle. So this is like a really interesting funding mechanism that can emerge, and we would invite other corporates to think about this. Create an ocean solution, sell that, take the profits from that, invest it into more ocean solutions, and watch the returns grow as you grow the ecosystem around it. So, there are many ways that we'll eventually be able to deploy capital, but there are very big differences between the institutional level and, say, the startup level. So I think a lot of it is going to come down to that voice of the community. That's why we're really adamant about bringing in so many community participants who are related to the ocean sector.
Sorry for the late situation. So this is amazing. I'm really excited to hear about it. And I think I just saw you at the World Ocean Council event in Barcelona. So it's a great little crowd. Yeah, I did. That's why I wanted to chat with you. I've been talking of blue investment funds. There's so many ocean investment funds out there, mutual funds that evolved into pension funds, that evolved into thematic funds that are trying to do blue, trying to do resilience, trying to do natural features, human-built environment features. So they say that they can't find investments. And of course, project finance is not a tradable asset. They're saying that they may need to lower their underwriting standards, create bonds, synthetic bonds to capture the investments into these projects, which could be startups, could be community driven. Do you envision that that's something that Ocean Climate Fund could even ponder on its launch, on its maiden voyage here? Because we're in an urgent crisis to get capital into coastal resilience, marine aquatic environment degradation, food systems, fresh water, so many things. So just would love any thoughts there.
Would you like to take that one?
Yes, indeed, a great question and very good observation. I see that Ocean Climate Fund that we are launching here is definitely well positioned by strategically putting in place all the elements of the technology stack to clear the informational asymmetry and effectively decrease the tremendous project preparation and deployment overhead that we are facing across many similar initiatives around the world, and ultimately reach the goal with the support of quite familiar and well-established tools like bonds, for instance. Public market instruments are not maybe the right fit for the startup phase of the projects, but this is here with the technology stack. We can again clear this asymmetry and bring this institutional money to work at the small projects level. So in that sense, taking stance analogy of artery and then small blood vessels, we are here in the strategic position to clear that informational asymmetry, to speed up the process of deployment, and definitely not to scare too much or deviate too much from the market conventions that are familiar to the institutional money like pension funds. And of course, taking into account that opportunities of placing public financial instruments in the public markets will be something that will be in our sailing map. So yeah, the answer is yes.
I would just add that one of the things I'm most excited about for 2025 is working with these community partners to just begin to create a data set that allows us to begin to evaluate. So within the collaboration between Hub Culture and Evercity, particularly, we're looking at how to link the core technologies we have for digital identity and even credentialing, like what I would call long tail credentialing, to map into the work that they're doing. And that merger of those technologies themselves can start to actually give an open platform for other types of projects to gain visibility and to be discovered by the community. And then we may not even be the funder necessarily. There may be other groups. There are at least 5 or 6 major funds that are in the $1 billion category. Petraeus is opening a new fund. There's Pegasus. There are a number of multi-billion-dollar assets. We were in a conversation with UN Global Compact for Oceans a while ago, and they told us that the overall blue bond economy for bonds signed this year was already 81 billion. But how do you account for that 81 billion? Why is that blue? Is that just like infrastructure redevelopment around the world that happens to touch water? Like, there's so many different questions about how all this stuff can play out. But one thing that is certain is that there's a lot happening, especially in that inside 200-mile coastal zone and around coastal resilience. And again, as I mentioned earlier, with that sea level rise, this is also going to become an infrastructure play for countries as we go into the next 3 to 5 years. And so, we can't be everything to everyone, but what we can do is work on the technology side, because we're kind of Web3 geeks, to think about how we build an open playing field. How does a social network operate like a fund? How does a fund operate like a social network? And one of the great things I think we should mention is our friends from Hedera are here. We're busy building blockchain interactivity with net zero carbon accounting, with on-chain like information through the Hedera Guardian system. So we see an important role for that to provide a next level transparency solution for all of these projects. So imagine a project gets funded, it has various funding criterion, you build methodologies that can be shared. All that stuff can be available on something like Guardian so that others can access it to move faster and to kind of, again, swim faster in various directions. Okay, do we have another question? Please.
Thank you very much. I am Alpha Abba from the Republic of Guinea. I present my excuse for being late. I wanted to be here at 1:30, but I couldn't. I didn't follow up your presentation, but as far as you are concerned, I am from Guinea and from Western Africa, and we are sharing a boundary of 300 kilometers from the ocean. So, we'd like to know what organization like this can, how we can support our country. An organization like this Ocean Climate Fund, what kind of support we can expect from this one? Thank you. And I don't know whether this one, I think this is a new organization, Ocean Climate Fund, or it has been created a long time.
Right. This is a new, just launching organization that definitely has a very solid background in terms of experience and knowledge. So if we are talking about the initiative itself, it's not that new. Everybody involved in this process and project definitely having something in mind about oceans, about technology, and of course about climate. So even that legally or judicially, it's still something that is being launched now. We are definitely having a solid background and mechanisms in place that we can effectively start deploying from day one. And countries like Guinea have a lot of climate vulnerabilities, and ocean exposure maybe sometimes augment this into the dramatic effects of droughts, floods, and other sea level rising. So definitely, first of all, to help the countries understand what they are facing and how they can preempt that detrimental effect will be something that we will be working from the day one, in close cooperation with the national designated authority, with the stakeholders from public and private sector, with indigenous people communities. We are confident that we can design a good pipeline of projects that will be relevant for country, that will be impactful for the planet, and definitely will be laying pathway towards future follow-on projects. So I think that for countries like Guinea, we definitely can bring financial resources that will be deployed to support these projects. We'll bring knowledge that will be effectively transferred at the disposal of the country and its stakeholders, and we will bring global support of the entire planet, maybe, who will be not only observing and controlling that everything is done well, but also giving the right way forward. Right, and of course, it's a two-way road. We cannot do all the things, and we hope that countries who are the key actors in this process will support the initiative with non-objection letters if we pursue the process with the Green Climate Fund. And with the right stakeholders and in conversation with them, we definitely will help, and we will be looking forward to our effective cooperation.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Okay.
Invite everyone to Saturday.
Let's have a word from Flo.
No, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming today. I'm glad that we could share a bit more insight on what's going on. And I'd like to extend an invitation to anyone that's still going to be in town, we are hosting our first community partner session on Saturday at the Landmark. It's Hub Culture's private pavilion. And we will be expanding on these conversations further. So yeah, we'd love to see you all there. Oh, and yeah, you can check out further events at hubculture.com/events. And of course, if you want to learn any more about the OCF, feel free to grab my card after this. And we are at oceanclimatefund.com.
It's a great partnership. We're so excited.